All right, well, Shabbat Shalom, YouTube. Just returned the remnant. Sorry I haven't been with you guys the last couple of weeks. Uh, been working on the homestead, trying to get buildings done, and when Sabbath comes, I'm just ready for a rest. But I thought today we would do a teaching on Sodom and Gomorrah. And let me just get my microphone set up here. This teaching is going to be a long teaching. Hour and a half. I want to take my time with this one, but I've entitled this teaching Sodom and Gomorrah. And have you ever asked yourself, why were the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah judged by Yahweh with brimstone and fire, and not all the other wicked cities during that time or any other time up until now? And I believe I have the answer. And before we do that, though, I'm going to go through and explain a lot of things with Sodom and Gomorrah. Marilyn and I have been to this site several times. We've brought back sulfur balls. You can still go there today and find them, and you can still light them today. The actual judgment of Yah, like it says in Genesis 19, when Yahweh rained down brimstone and fire from heaven. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But let's go through this PowerPoint. There'll be a break about halfway through if you want to pause the video. If not, there's about 57 slides. So let's continue. So the location of Sodom, for sake of time, you might want to read Genesis 13. But down in the Dead Sea, there's some places where people believe that Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Zoar are located. We do know where Zoar is located, which would be down in the southern tip of the Dead Sea. And we know this because Joseph Neve, in the 70s, I believe, after the Yom Kippur War of 73, this area was available for him to excavate. And this is where we find some of the Zoar tombstones that help us pinpoint and identify when the Shemitah year is. And that is for a whole other teaching. But in following with the Shemitah cycles, right now, Marilyn and I are in the Shemitah cycle of 2023 to 2024. And Aviv 1 of 2024, which we look around March 9th, 10th, 11th, somewhere right in there, is going to be Aviv 1 of the following year, which will end our land Sabbath Shemitah observance. But if we take a look at this map, you can't really tell. There's no signs here, but Highway 90 comes down from Bet Shean to the Dead Sea region and kind of curves around. And it ends up, I believe, ending in Eilat, the southernmost tip of Israel. Up here, where Salem or Jerusalem is Highway 1 that comes into here. If you would follow Highway 90 down, drive past En-Gedi, and when you get down here to Masada, you start seeing the landscape is a lot different. Very, very much different. And what amazes me is I came to this understanding back around 2009, and I've been there several times with Marilyn, and we have picked up sulfur balls, and I will show you some of that in the video and on the slides here. But if you go to Masada, the road that takes you into Masada off of Highway 90, if you just look to the south and a little bit to the north, you will see that this indeed is one of the four cities destroyed by Yahweh. Whether it's Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, I don't know. So let's get a little background on what went on. In Genesis 13, we know, I'm not going to read all of it, but there was a dispute with Lot and his herdsmen and Abraham and his herdsmen, and they separated. And basically Lot looked down. He looked down and saw the valley of Siddim, the Sea of Salt, if you will, the Dead Sea region. And he saw how that area was well watered, and he liked that area. And he went that way. And Abraham went the other way, kind of towards Hebron. We know that there's other sources outside the Bible to prove that there is a place known as Sodom. In Josephus, Antiquity of the Jews, it says, "But Lot possessed the land of the plain, the river Jordan, not far from the city of Sodom, which was then a fine city, but is now destroyed by the will and wrath of God." We also find that in the book of Jasher. Whether or not that is an actual true book or not, we see it in there. We also see it in the book of Jubilees, which we know the book of Jubilees existed during the time of the Essenes, because during the Dead Sea Scrolls discovery outside of Qumran in the caves, they have found remnants of the book of Jubilees. So if we get into Genesis chapter 14, verses 1 through 4, we know that there were the kings of the north, and during this time, the kings of the south, and the kings of the south being the king of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Zoar, were paying tribute to Chedorlaomer, king of the north. And for, I think it was 12 years they were paying tribute. And then one year they decided we're not going to pay anymore. And then in the 13th year, then the kings of the north came to destroy or invade Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, those cities. So who are the kings of the east or the kings of the north? The Targums give a explanation that it was in the days of Amraphel, he is Nimrod, who commanded Abram to be cast into the furnace. He was then king of Pontus, Arioch, so called, because he was tall among the giants. King of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, so called because he had bound himself or gone over among the bondmen of the king of Elam, and title, crafty as a fox, king of the peoples, the Goim, subjected to him. In the book of Yasher, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, sent to all the neighboring kings, to Nimrod, king of Shinar, who was then under his power, and to Tidal, king of the Goim, and to Arioch, king of Elasar, with whom he made a covenant, saying, "Come up to me to assist me, that we may smite all the towns of Sodom and its inhabitants, for they have rebelled against me these 13 years. So Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboiim, those cities, and the other one I forget offhand, they rebelled, as it says in the Torah in Genesis 14. So the text that we have suggests that Chedorlaomer may have been the suzerain king in Mesopotamia, that he was the head king, and he had all these other kings like Tidal, and the other kings were vassals or subject to him. Chedorlaomer was likely the suzerain king over Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Bela. That's the one I missed. Offering protection for a yearly tribute. And the next map I'm going to show you is going to show you approximately how far apart these regions were from each other. We're looking at 500 miles or plus. And more than likely, there's no biblical reference to this, but Chedorlaomer probably had outposts near Sodom and Gomorrah where a tax would be collected and then sent off to Elam. And when the tax was not received in the 13th year, an army was sent to deal with it. This gives you a little bit idea of the location of the four kings, kings of the east or the kings of the north. Down here is Israel. This would be the Dead Sea region, and this would be the area for sure where at least a couple of these cities were. Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, Bela. These were it. Up here are the kings of the north. This area here, through archaeological excavations, proves that there was a king's highway that came down up in the Fertile Crescent area, worked its way down to the east side of the Jordanian mountain range, where Mount Nebo is, where Moshe was buried. And this area would have been the King's Highway that would have connected all the way down to Elat. There was also another road that went this way towards Egypt. So these kings would have went down this way to the King's Highway. So if we go back to Genesis 14, it says in the 14th year, so it takes a while to muster an army. It takes a while for logistics of getting all these people. And I believe in the book of Jasher, whether it's true or not, there was like a 1,000,000-man army that was raised up, these kings of the east or the kings of the north up in the Fertile Crescent. And it says, in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims and Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzims and Ham, and the Amims and Shaveh Kiriathaim, and the Horites in their Mount Seir unto El Paran, which is by the wilderness. And they returned and came to En-Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites that dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. So, point to ponder here, if we follow the timeline and follow the locations, why did the kings of the east destroy these 6 kingdom cities? This is on the way to the Dead Sea region. Here's some possible explanations. Number 1, to expand dominance over the region. They destroy all that, they get more tribute. subdue them, the enemies. Most likely these kingdom cities were along or near the king's highway, which is the trade route. Control the trade, dominate the region. That's basic 101 economics, I guess you could say. And this may also be a stopgap measure. Chedorlaomer and his coalition may not be certain who might join with the other 5 kings. Maybe other kings are going to rebel. They have no idea who they're going to be dealing with. There could have been an alliance with Sodom Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Bela that would even be a more formidable opponent. And we also know that an army runs off of food supplies. So we have to pillage food for troops to keep them going, keep them happy. So these nations that the kings of the east destroyed, very interesting. Many of these, I don't know where you stand on this, but many of these would be considered giant class nations, if you will. So one was the Rephaim. And if you go into the Brown Driver Briggs, it has the meaning of giants. And 2 sources place Ashtaroth Karnaim as being 25 miles south of Damascus, likely the future area of Bashan, east of the Jordan. And again, right along the King's Highway. The Zuzims. Now, the Brown Driver Briggs definition says that the Zuzims are roving creatures, and the location of the Zuzim is probably in the territory of the Ammonites east of the Jordan, again, along the King's Highway, in my opinion. Interestingly, in Deuteronomy chapter 2, Moshe explains that when they went across, came, on their journeys, he says, and when you came over against the children of Ammon, distress them not, nor meddle with them, for I will not give you of the land of the children of Ammon any possession, because I have given it unto the children of Lot. This is Yahweh speaking. That also was accounted a land of giants. Giants dwelt there in old time, and the Ammonites called them Zamzumims. It's the same thing. A people great and many and tall as the Anakims. But Yahweh destroyed them before them, and they succeeded them and dwelt in their stead. So we have 2 classes of giants so far. Here is the Amims. And again, the Brown Driver Briggs definition, I believe they list them as terrors. They lived east of the Salt Sea, where Moab will eventually inhabit. Thought to be giants also. In Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 9, it says that the Amims dwelt therein in past times, a people great and many and tall as the Anakims. And we know when we go back into the book of Numbers, when the 12 spies were sent out, they went to an area around Hebron where the Anakim were, the sons of Anak. And they said these people are huge. We look like grasshoppers in their eyes. We're like the Nephilim. So however you want to look at Genesis 6:4, in my opinion, there were giant class people living in those days. And even afterwards, we know that Goliath, however you want to look at the determination of the cubit, whether it's the standard cubit, royal cubit, that Goliath would have been anywhere from 9 foot 6 inches to 13 feet. 9 feet, 6 inches to 13 feet. And here are the Horites. Also, they're basically cave dwellers. And Mount Seir would have been down near the Gulf of Aqaba. And we know that Esau will eventually take possession there. So that's south of the Dead Sea and east, again, along the King's Highway. And then we have the Horims. The Amalekites, it says in Numbers 13:29, they lived in the south, the Negev. And the Amorites earlier lived in the Negev, later lived to the east of Canaan. And we see that in Numbers 32, verse 39. So continuing on with Genesis 14. So in my opinion, they're coming down the King's Highway and they get down south and they destroy the Amalekites. And it says, and they returned, to Shuvah or Shuv, returned, meaning turn back in the opposite direction. And they came to En Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites that dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. So they worked their way into the Negev to destroy the Amalekites, and then they turn back, basically they're going southwest, if you will, and now they're going northeast. And to me, I believe that the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Bela, which became Zoar, I think that they thought that these kings were going to come down where I showed you Highway 90, that modern area, and work their way down to En Gedi and get caught up in the tar pits, which you're going to see here in a little bit. But instead, these kings went south and came around and came back up. And I've got a map that's going to show that a little bit better. And I think that's probably the key in how Sodom and Gomorrah was defeated fairly easily. Chedorlaomer may have doubled back and attacked from the southwest. Yeah, so again, as I said before, I believe the kings of Sodom wanted to draw the kings of the east to attack from the east or the north, which would cause them to fall into the tar pits or deal with rough mountain terrain. Coming from the southwest meant that the kings of Sodom were trapped in by mountains and would fall into the tar pits, which did happen. And I believe that the kings from the east just didn't haphazardly travel west to put down rebellion. Ancient Near East tactics and strategy were used in this campaign. So you get a little bit of map here of the Golan Heights. Tel Dan, here's Damascus, here's the Kinneret, Lake Kinneret or Sea of Galilee, and the King's Highway coming down. And then this is another road that takes you to Egypt. And what did it say? That they came down and then they went over to the Amalekites over in Kadesh, and then they came back. So if we take a look here, to me, this would be the step-by-step conquest of what the kings of the east did. They took out the Rephaims and Ashtaroth Karnaim, then the Zuzims. Here's the King's Highway, basically. Then the Amims, then came down to El Paran, then over to Kadesh, then Hazazon Tamar, working their way back. And then now, right up and through here, free pickings against the 5 kings of the south. So let's go ahead and read this. So now we're ready for this big battle. And there went out the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboiim, and the king of Bela. The same is Zoar. And they joined battle with them in the valley of Siddim. With Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, and with Tidal, king of nations, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against the 5. And the valley of Siddim was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there, and they that remained fled to the mountain. And if you've been down there, the Sea of Galilee, I should say the Dead Sea, is the lowest inhabitable point on earth. And you have mountains on both sides. There's no way to go. There's nowhere to go. And these mountains are rugged. They're steep. It's not like you can just climb out of there. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. When Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot, and his goods, and the women also, and the people. So we get an idea in this battle that the kings of the north basically took all the goods and everything. I'm sure killed several people too. And then they took everybody basically hostage, and they were going to take them back, I think, back to where they came from. And here Abraham and his men heard about it, and there's just 318. Okay, so we definitely know that Yahweh is involved in this whole thing. I mean, he's on Abraham's side. Anyway, so let's look at this here. So, getting back, who rebelled? Who rebelled? Here are the cities that rebelled against the kings of the north. 5 of them, right? Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Bela, which is Zoar. If you look carefully at that verse, Genesis 14:2, you're going to see 5 cities, but there's only 4 kings named here. You have Bela, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zeboiim. And then there's no name of the king of Bela. Also, keep in mind that you have 5 cities here, but one of the cities has a name change. And I want you just to keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this, because that name change is a big deal. Then we know that there's an encounter with Melchizedek. Just to make a long story short, Abraham comes out. He gives a tenth of what he has to Melchizedek, the king of Salem. And then Sodom, the king of Sodom, says, give me the people and you can keep the goods. And Abraham said, no, I've lifted up my hand. He's basically made an oath to Yahweh, El Elyon, the possessor of heaven and earth. He's not going to take any of it. The only thing he's going to take is what the people have eaten, and to give a portion for those that came to help him. Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them take their portion. So what are the gleanings from the encounter? Abraham receives a blessing from Melchizedek, and they both shared in a covenant meal, the bread and the wine. Abraham gave gifts, gave tithes, I should say, from all the spoil. He gave a tithe to Melchizedek. And we know that Melchizedek's Elohim is also Abraham's Elohim. And as I said before, he raised his hand, signifying an oath that he made to Yahweh, that he would not take anything that belongs to those kings. And then he also makes this declaration. He says that Yahweh is the Most High God. He is El Elyon, the possessor of heaven and earth. And who are his witnesses? Melchizedek, king of Salem, and also the king of Sodom. So we see within this encounter, there's a blessing, a covenant meal, a free will offering, an oath is being made, and a declaration in front of witnesses. So again, I kind of said a little while ago, how was Abraham and the small coalition of 318 people able to defeat the 4 kings? And we see thematic connections here too, which we'll get to. But Genesis 13:17, Yahweh is saying to Abraham, arise, Abraham, walk through the land in the length of it and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto you. We see this thematic connection between what went on with Abraham and the father. Also is something very similar that Gideon had with the father in regards to fighting a huge fighting force. Yahweh said unto Gideon, surely I will be with you, and you shall smite the Midianites as one man. So here, Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, Tidal, king of nations, all these kings, a vast army. And as I said before, about 1 million-man army, according to extra biblical or non-biblical sources. In Judges chapter 7, verse 12, we have the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along the valley like grasshoppers for multitude. So another huge, vast army. And here Yahweh says unto Gideon, the people that are with you are too many. So what he did, he got it down to about 300 men. And he divided them into 3 companies, and they attacked at night. Well, here we see the same thing. It happened once before with Abraham. Abraham divided himself against them. His 318 men, he divided them up, and at night attacked them. Gideon came to Jordan, passed over, he and the 300 men that were with him, faint yet pursuing. I believe that there wasn't a single person lost there. Same here. And I don't believe in Genesis 14:24 that the 318 men that were with Abraham didn't lose anyone from his coalition either, because of the blessing of the Father was on them. The blessing of the Father was on Gideon. The blessing of the Father was on Abraham. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor, and their hosts with them, about 15,000 men. These are the Midianites. And that were left of all the hosts of the children of the east, for there fell 120,000 men that drew sword. And likewise, many fighting men from the 4 kings of the east, in Genesis 14, fell against Abraham and his 318 men. Again, both Gideon and Abraham, along with their men, were protected by the hand of Yahweh. Both men believed in the promises made to them. Abraham believed the land that was given to him and to his seed, and that, remember, Isaac hadn't been born yet. Abraham didn't know who was going to be, his heir, whether it was going to be Eleazar or was it later, going to be Ishmael. Who is it going to be? And God had a plan for him, just like God had a plan with Gideon. He told Gideon he would defeat the Midianites and not die. So definitely Yahweh was involved in both of these battles. So what does the Bible say concerning Sodom and Gomorrah? In Genesis 13, it says that the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before Yahweh exceedingly. We know what happened in Genesis 19, where the men of the city wanted to come out and have intimate relations with the messengers of Yah that came to see Lot before the destruction of those cities. Jeremiah 23:14, it says, I have seen also in the prophets of Jerusalem a horrible thing. They commit adultery, walk in lies, and they strengthen also the hands of evildoers, that none do return from his wickedness. They are all of them unto me as Sodom, and the inhabitants therein as Gomorrah. So again, adultery, walking lies, strengthen also the hands of the evildoers, false judgment. Here we see Ezekiel talks about with Sodom being a pride and fullness of bread, abundance of idleness, didn't strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy. And 2 Peter comments on Sodom and Gomorrah that they were living ungodly lives. In Jude, it says that they give themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh. And definitely injustice, unrighteousness. So this is a break right now. I don't know how long we've been going through this right now. I believe 30 minutes. So we're about halfway through. If you want, take a break, stretch, and then come back and hit play. If not, we're going to go ahead and continue this journey. So Genesis 19, we saw what happened in Genesis 13 and 14 in this war that came about, and how Abraham saved Lot and all the people. He swore an oath to Yahweh. And now we get into Genesis 19, the names of the cities and their meanings in Hebrew. And as we look at Sodom, Sodom means scorch or burnt, or turn to enter chaos. Gomorrah means to manipulate, deal tyrannically with, treat as a slave. Admah comes from Admah, meaning earth or ground, worldly. If you follow out the root word, to show blood in the face. So far, these names of these cities are not good. They're not good. Zeboiim. Even though it says gazelles here, if we would follow out from the root word, it's in the sense of prominence or splendor. you could basically say more than anything. You'd follow this out. I don't have time to go through it, but pride would be something that would fit the name of this city. And then lastly, Bela. And Bela means to devour, or figuratively means destruction. So we have these 5 cities, and none of them have any good associated with them. If we take a look at the name of the kings and their Hebrew meanings, the king of Sodom was Bera, meaning son of evil. The king of Gomorrah was Bersha, meaning with iniquity. And Admah, the king of Admah, was Shinab. But if we look at it, says a father has turned. But if we go into the ancient Hebrew lexicon, if we take a look at the pictograph of the shin and the noon, if you combine those, it could mean that the teeth continue. The 2 front teeth are sharp and used for cutting foods by pressing down. And so, in my opinion here, to show sharp teeth in the negative could mean to threaten or to devour. Maybe a stretch here, but I'm going to stick to that one. And then the last king that we have listed for Zeboiim, remember, Bela didn't have their king listed, but Zeboiim does, and it's Shemeber, lofty flight, name of opinion, that is illustrious. Hard to really even follow this. If you go into the Targums, they say that he corrupted himself with fornication. So, however we want to slice and dice this, the cities, the names of the cities were basically that of evil, and the name of the kings that were heads of these cities were more than likely evil. Now, forgive me if you start hearing some noises. We got some real windy weather out right now, and there's stuff blowing around outside. You may hear some noises out there. So in Genesis 19, we know that after this meeting with outside of Hebron with Abraham and I believe Yeshua, Yahweh sends the 2 other men, which are, I believe, angels, but he sends them to Sodom and Gomorrah and those cities to destroy those cities and to deliver Lot, Abraham's nephew. And Lot was instructed to escape to the mountain during this time. He was there like, hey, we can't do anything until you leave. Go to this mountain. But he doesn't. Lot does not go to the mountain. What does he say? In Genesis 19, verse 19, he says, behold now, your servant has found grace in your sight. So this is Lot speaking to the angels. He says, look, if I found grace in your sight, and you have magnified your mercy, which you have showed unto me in saving my life, and I cannot escape to the mountain lest some evil take me and I die. Behold, there is a city that is near to flee unto, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape thither. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. And then the angel, the messenger of Yahweh, responds back to Lot, go and escape there, for I cannot do anything till you get there. Therefore, the name of the city was called Zoar. So, if you're looking at this, I believe the translation is lacking here. And I am no expert. I'll be the first to tell you I'm no expert in biblical Hebrew, any of that stuff. But for it to be a little city or a little one and to escape there, that verse doesn't make sense. And I will show you what I believe the true meaning of Zoar is. We'll get to that in just a minute. But it came to pass when Elohim destroyed the cities of the plain that Elohim remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in the which Lot dwelt. So again, what is the significance of Zoar? And when you look at the Strong's concordance, you find out that Zoar is little. It means little. But if you follow out the root word of it, it means to be small, or figuratively ignoble, insignificant, or to be brought low. Little one, be small. In other words, to be humble. That is what I want to get across, that Zoar in this instance means to be humble. Remember, it had a name change, went from Bela, destruction, to Zoar, humble. You'll see why I follow this out. So we just read that the angels of Yahweh destroyed the cities of the plain, Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboiim. Lot is allowed to escape and flees to a city named Zoar, which used to be called Bela. And right back in the beginning of this, I said there was a name change of that city, the only one. So again, what did Bela mean? It meant destruction. And according to the Hebrew definitions, I'm making a case that a city that was once destined for destruction, Bela, became humble, Zoar. How did it happen? This story gives us a sneak peek into redemption. Back in Genesis 14, Yahweh redeemed the people living in the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Bela through his servant Abraham and those who were in covenant with him. It is recorded in the Bible that Abraham rescued his nephew Lot and defeated the northern kings, obviously with the help of Yahweh. He also rescued the people of Sodom and the other cities that were captured by the northern kings. Abraham also captured all the wealth of the northern kings. Abraham did not accept anything from the king of Sodom. Were all the people saved by only Abraham and his 318 men? Or do you think that Yahweh had something to do with this? Yeah, he did. Yahweh did. Later in Genesis 15, Yahweh says to Abraham, "Fear not, Abraham, I am your shield and your exceedingly great reward." These people that were captured by Chedorlaomer and his coalition were redeemed by Yahweh. And I believe Yahweh wanted to see if these cities that were redeemed, the people of these cities, Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Bela, if they would change their ways. And Genesis 18 and 19 deal with Yahweh's judgment to those who would not change, which is brimstone and fire. And what was the brimstone and fire? It's the breath of Yah. And this gofrit, which is the brimstone, is like a sulfur type of material. And I'm going to show you that you can still go there to this day and find this type of brimstone. And then obviously the brimstone and fire. So gofrit and esh or ish. Okay, it's fire and brimstone, the sulfur that was on fire, if you will. Not to get off on a rabbi trail, but I want to give you a little idea so you can get a visual of what this is all about. This here, again, if you get over to Masada and you park your car off the road and take a little journey into this area that looks like tall ash, white ash heap. If you walk around long enough, and I wouldn't recommend going in the summertime. I've been there in the summer in Israel and it is super, super hot. You don't want to go then. Preferably late spring. This area does not get hardly any rain, but when it does, it helps wash away things. You can find things a little bit better. But this here is an encased sulfur ball, and see the hole there? This is where something was being burned out of it, falling from the sky and solidifying. And here it is in the ground. I'll show you some better pictures, but you can dig these out and you can find inside of that hole usually an encased sulfur ball. This is what it looks like. You still have this almost like rusty material around it, and inside of it you have the sulfur ball. We'll go ahead and hit play here so you can get an idea. Okay, this right here is a nice sulfur ball. Nice chunk there, very nice chunk, and you can still find them to this day. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but you're going to see a different color on the ground, and that is where the sulfur balls are. Okay, I'm here at by Masada, down where I believe it's one of the cities that were destroyed by brimstone and fire, as recorded in Genesis 19. Right here, you get an idea. I'm starting to have better luck now finding stuff. It's whoops. Well, anyway, you got a chance to see it. But Ron Wyatt, the founder of the Wyatt Archaeological Research, began a study to see, because he has been there, he has been to this location, if this brimstone was found in this form anywhere else on the earth here. And so they went to the Smithsonian Institute, Washington, D.C., and examined their display of sulfur in its various forms. And none of the ones they found were rounded balls of powdered sulfur, and none of them were encapsulated. A request was granted by the Smithsonian that specimens other than those on display be examined. This collection of sulfur from around the world consisted of over 50 specimens, and none of them displayed the characteristics of brimstone sulfur found in the vicinity of the cities of the plain. This gives you an idea of what they normally look like, but not here at Sodom Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim. Let me just go ahead and read. But each of the cities of the plain contain evidence of brimstone, which God rained down upon these cities to destroy them. The brimstone is composed of 96% or better percent of sulfur with trace amounts of magnesium, which create an extremely high temperature burn. This is the only place on earth where you can find 96% pure monoclinic sulfur in a round ball. This brimstone is not from any type of geothermal activity, as there is no evidence of such in the area. And geothermal sulfur nodules are only 40% pure sulfur and are of the rhombic type. So where volcanoes are, you will see this type of material, but not these round powdered balls of sulfur. I'll have some more pictures here in a minute. But we see later in Scripture, we find out more about the brimstone and fire. It's going to happen again. It's going to happen during Ezekiel 38 with the future Gog-Magog war. Also before Yeshua's second coming, it says, even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed, that there's going to be a rain of fire and brimstone. Here, the second death in Revelation 21, but the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake, which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Deuteronomy 29, verse 23, Moses, years later, Moses speaking of this location, he says that the whole land thereof is brimstone and salt and burning, that it is not sown, nor bears, nor any grass grows therein, like the overthrow of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboiim, which Yahweh overthrew in his anger and in his wrath. Jeremiah 49:18, and it is in the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord, no man shall abide there, neither shall a son of man dwell in it. And I can tell you right now, there isn't a weed that grows there in that area. It's hot. It's uninhabitable. Jeremiah 50, verse 40, as God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord, so shall no man abide there. No man does abide there. Neither shall any son of man dwell therein. Here Josephus writes about it. He says, now this country is then so sadly burned up that nobody cares to come at it. It was of old a most happy land. And it was, when Lot first looked at it, it was like Egypt, the Garden of Egypt, or a Garden of Eden, if you will. And it was just gorgeous because it bare the fruits it bore, the riches of its cities, although it now is all burned up. It is related how for the impiety of its inhabitants it was burnt by lightning, in consequence of which there are still the remainders of that divine fire, and the traces of the 5 cities are still to be seen. And you know what? If Josephus saw it in his day, we can certainly see it still in our day. And as I said before, one of the cities for sure down the Dead Sea region one of these cities that was destroyed, the remains of that city are still there. And think of all the millions of people that go to Masada every year, and they have no idea when they look down, especially if they look down into the south, they're witnessing Yah's destruction of one of those cities. This is an area. Over here is the Dead Sea. And as you're driving down along this road here, this is Highway 90, you can drive off. It's very easy to drive off and park your vehicle and walk up here. But you'll start to see structures. And these really doesn't do a lot of this is really not a great picture. But this is a totally different landscape than anywhere else in the area. There's an area like this. There's a couple more south of here, and maybe even one north of there. I can't remember. But to me, when you look at this, these look like layers of ash. Whoops. So as you park your car, you can just walk right through here and notice all of these 90-degree angles on all this stuff. And the material up here looks different. And this is very much man-made. It's unnatural. I'm looking east towards the Jordanian mountain range, YHWH Gomorrah, and this is definitely one of the cities structure that was destroyed. And definitely, if you look over here to the right, that is definitely a man-made structure. And if you look to the right of that, this object here, I probably have to look at Ron Wyatt's video, but I know I've seen it, and they give a better explanation of what I ever could. And then this thing here is definitely a man-made structure. So do you see how flat this is in 90-degree angles? And I know I'm not doing probably a great job, but if you do a little bit of search online with Ron Wyatt, he has a lot more information here than what I could give on this. Sure. So, with that being said, this is definitely a city that was destroyed, as it was said in the Bible in Genesis. And as you get close to these structures, you can just run your hands through this in these layers of ash, if you will, just crumble in your hand. It's like everything got superheated and just crunched down. There's also areas, I don't know if I have a picture of it, but it got so superheated, you can find areas of glass where it was so hot. Now, you tell me that doesn't look like something that was just superheated. A structure that maybe was on this top of this hill, superheated and just melted. Just incredible. We're about 3 miles south of the Masada exit off of Interstate or Highway 90. This just gives you an idea where we're at for future reference. So again, we see this white chalky material that definitely, to me, is like limestone that turned to ash from the heat. And these areas here from satellite give you an idea of where we think some of these places were. Now, this may not be 100% accurate, but I can tell you this is the area that I was at. Whether this is Gomorrah, Sodom, Admah, we don't know. But somewhere down in here, I believe Lot would have lived in one of these two areas, because down below here, where you can't really see, but down here at the very south is where Zoar is. And that, you know, if let's put it this way. There was a town there called Zoar, and it existed in the 3rd and 4th century Common Era, or AD. And it was the only city that did not get destroyed, because what did God say? No one will ever live there. Well, Zoar is the only place where there was people who lived, of those 5 cities. And that is where we also find the Zoar tombstones, which again help us to determine and reckon the Shemitah year cycles. Anyway, it's for a whole nother teaching there. But anyway, as I said before, these areas, as you're coming down Highway 90, you see the different landscapes. See how these are? These look like small cities. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then Zoar, I don't believe is here. I believe it's down here more. If you just look at where Joseph Neve was excavating, he was farther south of that. According to arcdiscovery.com, which is a Ron Wyatt website, I believe, besides finding sulfur balls there was spearhead and a cache of burnt gold, which is now gold salts. Burned bones, jars, and towel have also been found by others who have visited the cities. It is definitely a really interesting place to go look at. So here I did an experiment. You can still light these to this day, and I still have a few of them around, and I'll demonstrate it every now and then during the feast days. I'll get some people and light it. And when it's lit, and remember, these are small sulfur balls. I believe there was huge sulfur balls that came out of the sky and filled the valley. And I want you to understand something. I believe that when Yahweh judged these cities, even in his judgment, there was mercy. Because if you think about it, you're standing outside, and all of a sudden this brimstone and fire is coming out of the heavens. What's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to go inside to your house. You're going to get protected from what's coming. And I believe when the sulfur balls came down and hit the ground, yeah, some people probably got hit by them and burned alive, but the vast majority of people went in their homes and died of asphyxiation. There was no oxygen left in the valley. And the sulfur balls that you can find today are the ones that came down last. And as they came down and hit the ground, there was no oxygen for them to continue burning. And I think they burned out. But anyway, just this little sulfur ball here, after I lit it, very small, 1.5 inch sulfur ball, burned for more than 3 minutes. And it does produce intense heat. So think of millions and millions and millions of these coming down and falling into the Dead Sea. And they release what's called sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. And it smells, it says a toxic gas with a pungent, irritating smell. It smells like rotten eggs. And I guarantee you, if you get these, don't light them inside the house. Get them outside with a breeze that you're upwind of. So you're going to get an idea what this looks like after it's been lit. It actually looks like liquid napalm. If it got on you, it's not going to get off you. You can't blow it off. You can't rub it off. It will stick to you. Kind of looks like a sterno. You can light a sterno can. So that kind of gives you an idea what it looks like. And you can cut it up and move it around. But for the sake of time, if you want to go to our website, returnthерemnant.com, you can look at this full video. But I'm going to continue on for the sake of time. Here's another one. Again, it's a gel-like liquid that can stand high winds. I blew on this and you could not blow it out. So I did that experiment in kibbutz. Oh gosh, I can't remember. It was in Afula, kibbutz Marchavia in Afula, and did this experiment outside with some other believers, and they really thought that was interesting. So some final thoughts here. I believe that Yahweh used Abraham to redeem not only Lot, but these people that lived in Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Bela. which we find in Genesis 14. I believe that Yahweh wanted to see if the people would change for the better and turn from their wicked ways. I believe that the reason why the city of Bela was not destroyed was because they turned from their wicked ways. I mean, remember Jonah and Nineveh? They changed from their wicked ways, and Yahweh relented. For a time, he relented. And I believe that this city of Bela was brought low. They humbled themselves, Zoar. Not, it's a little one, it is a humble town. Can I go there? Lot says. I want to go there because it is a humble town. And because they were humbled, they humbled themselves and changed from their wicked ways. They were saved from the destruction in Genesis 19. In Jeremiah 18, Yahweh says, verses 7 through 10, if at any time I announce that a nation or kingdom is to be uprooted, torn down, and destroyed, and if that nation I warn repents of its evil, then I will relent and not inflict on it the disaster I had planned. And if at another time I announce that a nation or kingdom is to be built up and planted, and if it does evil in my sight and does not obey me, then I will reconsider the good I had intended to do for it. And so my final thought here is, what does this have to say about us? Have we been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, Yeshua HaMashiach? Are we going to be like the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, or are we going to make a change like the people of Zoar? And maybe this is why in the book of Revelation it is written about a judgment of brimstone and fire upon the earth. Revelation 9, 17, and 18. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these three was the third part of men killed, by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouths. Remember, in Genesis 7, 8, God said he would never destroy the earth again with water. But we know he's going to destroy and cleanse the earth with fire. Second Peter 2:6, Peter writes, turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemning them to destruction, making them an example to those who afterwards would live ungodly. This is a message, a final call. Get off the fence. Be hot, not cold, not lukewarm, but be hot for Yah and for Yeshua. Psalm 11, verses 4 through 7. Yahweh is in his holy temple. Yahweh in the heavens is his throne. He observes the Son of Men. His eyes examine them. Yahweh examines the righteous, but the wicked and those who love violence his soul hates. On the wicked he will rain brimstone and burning sulfur. A scorching wind will be their lot. For Yahweh is righteous and he loves justice. Upright men will see his face. Have we turned from our wicked ways and turned back to Yahweh, our King? So hopefully you were able to get something out of that teaching, all from just a few verses of Bela, which is Zoar, and how Yahweh redeemed them and how they were brought low and saved from the coming destruction. And we know that the Bible has several patterns of redemption and salvation. And if we follow Yah's plan of redemption and salvation, then we will too be spared from the brimstone and fire and the wrath that is to come. Remember, Yahweh's people are not destined to Yahweh's wrath. I hope you enjoyed this teaching. I know it was a little bit long. If you have any comments or suggestions, please include them. Please like and subscribe. And again, I'll try and get these teachings out as often as possible. Until we meet again, shalom.